what happens in Canvas. Whether it's an academic course or it's a course that's created, the outcomes collect from the scoring criteria out of assignments and are pulled together at that whatever level the outcome is created. And this is where the automation process comes. Then faculty build it into their assignments. Then they simply score it as they do across their assignments. Then it automatically pulls these particular scores into the outcome category on the program, college, or institution level. So on the course level, what does it look like for a faculty member? We have found the most flexible way to import individual outcomes. And this would be done this way. A faculty member would click on the outcome. We would then help faculty understand they would go find an outcome that has already been created on the program or the college or the institution level. We don't want them to create outcomes in their course or the groups or the import. If they create an outcome in their course, that's where the score stays. In order to collect the score from an outcome in a course, the faculty has to download the data and give it to the program. And the whole purpose of doing this is to alleviate this in-between step, to automate data collection from the places the data is scored into where it needs to be sorted. So we wouldn't want them to create an outcome on their course level. When we click on Find, it'll pull up a window, and that window will show them all the outcomes that is within the purview of their course. So in other words, it'll pull the outcomes that have been created on the program level or the college level. Wherever that is created, they can go find the outcome. They will choose the outcome and select Import. So if I clicked on critical thinking and collect import, it'll pull that outcome into their course. And now the outcome that has been created is there inside of this course. It's not aligned to a scoring device yet. It's not aligned to an assignment. It just exists inside their course. This is then where they will align that outcome with a particular assignment. A faculty member can bring in as many outcomes as they intend to assess in their courses. Once the faculty has created their quiz, one thing that they probably didn't know is what those little 3 dots mean at the side of their page. This takes them to the place in Canvas where all their questions are housed or organized in these question banks. Question banks can be imported from other places, and that's a process I'm not going to go through, but I do want you to know they can be imported in a variety of ways depending on where it's imported from, and the instructions are in many places online. But once the questions are in Canvas, they are automatically created into a folder called Unfiled Questions. If someone has created multiple tests, there will be multiple unfiled questions. This is the place where you would select which questions fit within what particular outcome. Let's say you have an exam of 50 questions, and question 2, 8, 12, 15, 20 are all critical thinking questions. What the faculty would have to do is to align those questions with critical thinking. So the first thing that they would do is to add a question bank for critical thinking. Once they have added that question bank, then they will go back to their unfiled questions and open up that file. And at this point, they will want to do something called move multiple questions. In Canvas, they call it moving. And this makes the faculty think that, oh, they're taking the questions out of my test and putting it somewhere else. That's not what it's doing. It's aligning. It'll give you all of the questions that are in that question bank, and the faculty would choose which questions they want to go to critical thinking. And here they would select move questions. Again, it's not taking the questions out of their test. It is aligning the questions. So that is something I always have to explain to the faculty, is the terminology that's used, but they don't have too much trouble understanding that once it's explained. When that is collected, all these questions that they selected now can be seen inside of critical thinking. Then the only step that's left is to align it to an outcome. So by clicking Align Outcome, it will bring up all the outcomes that they brought into their course. Remember, at the very first thing, they need to bring the outcomes in that somewhere in their course they're going to assess. These questions they want to assess with critical thinking, so that they will select critical thinking and import it. And now there's critical thinking. Any question that's ever answered that is aligned with critical thinking will be collected in the critical thinking category on the program level. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the rubrics. If a faculty has an assignment in which they need to categorically score, they need to make decisions on what level the student is reaching using a rubric. So I'm going to say an assignment, there's a final paper. It could be a presentation, it could be a lab experiment, whatever it might be that's going to use a rubric. When that assignment is created, they would select the Add Rubric, and what is going to come up will be a generic version of a rubric. Now I'm going to show you several different mechanisms because the rubric function is extremely flexible. Let's imagine now if there has been a rubric created on the program level, or a common rubric on the college level or on the institution level. To do this, you would want them to find a rubric, not to create a rubric. If you create the rubrics on the program or college or institution level, it saves the faculty a lot of time because everything's already done. They just go find a rubric, go get it, bring it down. So you'll go find a rubric, it'll bring up all the rubrics that are available to you, and it'll pop down into the course, the whole rubric. Now here's the flexibility with this pre-created rubric. If the faculty wants to edit that pre-created rubric, they would click this little edit button. Let's imagine that there is a pre-created rubric with these particular criteria, but this particular assignment doesn't cover the first criteria or some criteria in there. They can selectively remove any individual criteria that doesn't fit their assignment, because there's no reason for them assessing something if their assignment doesn't appropriately address it. They also have the opportunity to add a criteria line. Let's say that there's a rubric, a common rubric, but they also, for their assignment score, they want to add a couple more things that they want to assess for their assignment, but they weren't necessarily prescribed by the college or the program, etc. They can add a rubric line to the bottom. Another option that they have is whether they want to use this rubric for grading. If they want to use this rubric for grading, they simply click it, and then that score will go to the grade book. It also might be that for the program, let's say for general education purposes, but doesn't fit into their grading scheme for that course. They can not check it, give the scores, but it not go to the grade book. Let's imagine now that you have a grading scheme that there were 4 categories in the rubric created in the program as a 4, 3, 2, 1. But they want each rubric line to be 10 points. They could remove the points from the rubric, and then when they're scoring, they can assign whatever level of points they want for that rubric line, and yet what goes back to the program is level 3. So you get the best of both worlds. Another option, instead of pulling down an entire rubric that's created somewhere else and editing it the way that it fits them, they can create it using outcomes. Of course, then they will give the rubric a title. There's this generic line there that they can add criteria, build criteria that they're going to use for their assignment for scoring. And let's imagine in this set of rubrics, there's going to be one line which fits an outcome that they need to assess from the program. At this point, they would go find an outcome. Remember, I talked about earlier, they can bring in individual outcomes into their course. They first bring in the outcomes that they somewhere will use in their course. They will go find that outcome. They will select it, and they will decide, do I want this outcome to go toward the grade I'm giving in my report card? If so, use this criteria for scoring should be checked. Sometimes a faculty member has their scoring device and they want to add a couple lines at the bottom of what they need to score for the program, but they don't want it to mess up their scoring that they have for their assignment. They can uncheck that, which means that they will be selecting whether they meet standard or approaching standard, but it won't impact the grade on the report card, but that score will go back to the program. That's an option as well. When they create their outcome, if you notice on this one, there are 3 created levels that they created on their own. And this one, they brought in an outcome line from their program. Notice it has a target. If it has a target, that means this score will go back to the program. If they have chosen for this to go toward their grade, these points will be collected here. If they have chosen that this outcome does not want to go to their grade, just to score for the program, then this will just have a line on it. They won't have any points. So that there are many different options in order to create rubrics to be able to use outcomes and score outcomes for the program level. The most important thing is the faculty only has to score their students once at the time when they're scoring particular competencies in which you want to collect data. You don't ask them, now go back and get that data and give us a report. It automatically comes together.